You good? All right. Hey, some people. Hey, Jeannie, I see you waving.
Peter.
Peter, I saw you waving. Anyways, I don't know who that guy is, but
Hey,
hey, how you doing?
what's up, buddy?
Looks like Chris Schwartz on meth. I'm just kidding. All right.
I think it is.
It could be Chris Schwartz. No. That's me. Looks like Matt Kinney on meth. All right. Last class, last lesson. This is pretty awesome that we've actually gotten. I mean, it's not. I mean, I planned it this way that we would get through everything, and we have. It's pretty awesome. Hopefully, I don't know how many people have been building along during the class. If you have, and you use Instagram, you should post your work and tag it. Well, definitely at MEK Woodworks. Then that way I'll definitely see it.
It's an Endgrain wall
And
cabinet.
then hashtag it with Endgrain wall cabinet. And then everyone can see everyone's work. I'll definitely post mine when it's completed. I'll probably finish it up here in the next couple of days. I'll hang it at my house somewhere, take some photographs, and post those to my Instagram account. But I'd love to see what everyone else is doing. So please do, if you have an Instagram account, post it to that. Otherwise, I mean, I guess you could send them to me via email or something because I don't get enough emails as it is. All right, tonight we are going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to show you how to do the pull on the drawer, and we are going to cut the back to fit in the opening, and we will talk about applying a finish, and I use shellac for that. So those are the three things we're going to go through tonight. Of course, as always, if you have questions, just ask them. Joe will keep an eye out for questions, and he'll read them for everybody. He has his mic set up again, and I'll answer them real time. And you can always ask questions in the community. And there's been several people have been asking me like how long these videos will be living on and accessible for you to watch. My answer is that I have no intention of taking them down, period. That doesn't mean that, 5 years from now, they might disappear, but I have no intention of taking them down. And even, I imagine at some point, if I intend to do more classes like this, that eventually we'll have a website of our own and all the videos will live there. And we'll figure out a way that you can still have access to it in that way. Anyways, I would also maybe figure out some way to conduct a anonymous survey to get feedback about the class. I know that I can probably do something through Google. I believe I can do that through Google Forms. So we'll do that. I'm going to try to do that. I'm not promising that'll happen. But I would like I would love to have feedback about the class, about the Thinkific website. I know there are areas that we can improve. Like I know there's some audio and visual problems initially. I think we've kind of ironed those out now since we're now not using the Zoom feed to upload. We're not uploading the Zoom feed anymore. Anyways, if you want to send me feedback without it being anonymous, you can send it to my email, which is matt@mekwoodworks.com. All right. And, the next class, which I intend to do one, I am going to do one. I'm not sure if it's going to be a technique or if it's going to be another project, but projects are nice because you get a lot of technique in them. But anyways, keep an eye out on Instagram for me to announce the details of that, because I imagine it'll be sometime right in the new year when we'll do it. Okay. And if you have suggestions about what you would like me to do, feel free to send me an email or send me a direct message through Instagram. That works as well. All right. So let's get started. We are going to start with the pull on the drawer front. And if you notice me labor over the word pull, it's because I have to fight my Florida accent, because what I really want to say is pull or pool. And it sounds like I'm saying the word swimming pool, but I'm not. I'm saying pull. So I have to stop and say it. All right. Got a drawer right here. And the pull on these is just, now I used ebony on the original, and I'm going to use ebony again. It's just a little piece of ebony that gets mortised into the top of the drawer. And the reason I'm going with that type of pull as opposed to something in the middle of the drawer is that you don't want to mess up the really nice grain match. The other one actually right now has the pull is being glued into it, so I can't show it to you. But you've got this really beautiful grain on the drawer front. You don't want to put a pull right in the middle of it and mess that up. So the least obtrusive thing that I could think of to do is just a little slab of wood right there in the middle and mortised into the top. It's only 1/8 of an inch thick, which is plenty thick enough for your fingers to grab hold of. It's 1 1/4 inches long, and the width of it extends 1/4 inch out past the front of the drawer. I'll put that information in Thinkific so you can refer back to it. But again, it's 1/8 of an inch thick, 1 1/4 inches long, and it extends 1/4 inch past the front of the drawer. Okay, so the width of it is really determined by how thick your drawer front plus the veneer ends up being. It should be right around 5/16. Okay, well, let's get started. To protect against tear out or chipping the drawer front veneers, and also to give me something to lay out on, I'm going to put a piece of tape on the drawer front. Make sure you do this on the top edge. You don't want to put your drawer pull on the bottom. And now I'm going to just lay out the 1 1/4 inch dimension. And you should be able to see the glue line that's in between the two center pieces of veneer. And that's where I'm assuming that that's centered. It's close to centered, but that's where I'm going to lay out from. Visually, I think it's important that the pull is centered on the veneer. If it's not perfectly centered on the drawer, that's fine. But I think you would notice that it's not perfectly centered on the veneer. So that's why I'm going from that veneer line. So I'm going to do, let's see, half of 1 1/4 is 5/8. That's the glue line right there. So 5/8 and 5/8. I'm going to just make that line a little more distinct. And I'm going to double check this. And I made it 1 1/2. So it's a good thing I double checked, because that's 5/8, but this is actually 7/8 because I'm a dum-dum. Okay. All right, so I got the length of it laid out, and now I'm gonna just, use a combo square or something set to 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to lay out the depth of the, whoops. I'm going to erase this stuff because I do not want to make a mistake. So I've laid out the mortise on the tape. You can see that. All right. And the way to do this, and to do it, especially since you have two, you set it up with stop blocks so that you can just quickly do one and then put the other drawer in, and you don't have to lay anything out for it. So everyone is probably familiar with this old chestnut of a woodworking trick. You just measure to, align the blade with the pencil line, and a stop on the left-hand side defines where the right hand, what we're looking at as the right-hand side of that mortise is going to be. And then a stop block on the right-hand side of the blade sets the limit for the other side of the mortise. So we're going to go like this. All right. I'm using a whip blade that has a flat tooth grind so that the bottom of this mortise is flat. You could do this with a normal blade, and all you would do is after you sort of cut, you're just going to make a cut, move, make a cut, move. You can go back and like this over the blade, and that'll flatten everything out. So you could do it that way as well. Remember that the sides and the back are shorter than the front. So you want to shim up the back of the drawer so that the drawer is level. And I'm just going to do that with a couple of business cards. Not, of course, my nice new business cards, but these old shitty ones. I shouldn't say shitty. I should say these irrelevant ones. All right. What's the matter? Oh, yeah. So we're going to turn on the dust collection. I'm going to adjust the blade to get it to the right height. And then I'm going to make the cuts. And then we'll turn the DC off. All right. All right. So there's the mortise. I have to admit, it kills me even to cut this into that veneer, but you have to have a pull of some sort. So I've already milled. So the ebony that I'm using, oh, you should also, I was telling myself all day, make sure you say this, make sure you say this. Obviously, it's a little tricky doing what I just did. See if can you zoom in on that? So when you are cutting that mortise, you have to be extremely careful not to go, because when I teach, this is what I see pretty much everyone does this with a crosscut sled. They just push it way too far. And you have to be controlled here and just barely get through that drawer front so that you're not cutting into the back of the drawer. Okay? We have a question. Joseph asked the question.
Yeah, Michael says, is it a good idea to put tape on the inside to prevent tear out from the blade?
It's not a bad idea. I did not get any, but it's possible that you would. So sure. All right. Here's my little piece of ebony. So I've already milled it. It's just over 1/8 of an inch thick, and that's so that after it's glued in, I can hand plane it flush. Okay. And it is also already the right width for my drawer front. So what I'm going to do is cut it down. I'm going to cut it slightly long. We can make this cut without the dust collector on it. It's not a big deal. He says as they both get emphysema from ebony dust. All right, I'm just going to make this cut real quick. And so, like I said, it's just a smidge too long, more than a smidge. It's like 2.5 smidges too long, which I right now find very disappointing. And the way to fit it is with a shooting board. We're just going to do that here. This is just a little shooting board from a block plane. Oh, there's a lot that needs to come off. What's the matter? All right.
Give me a sec. The card's almost full.
Oh, okay. All right, so now that fits in. You ready to switch out?
Yeah.
All right, we have to switch out the memory.
Keep talking.
Oh, I can keep talking. All right, so we're going to lose video for a minute, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So that's ready to be glued in now. I'm going to leave the tape on there so that if there's any squeeze out, it goes onto the tape and not onto the Endgrain veneer. Hey, I just got to grab a chisel real quick. Real quick. I'm going to get myself a chisel. Mm-hmm. Rinse around for chisels.
I hope this isn't these people's only social interaction all week.
It could be. It's my only social interaction for 6 months. All right. I'm gonna glue this guy in there, this little fella. Just some yellow glue. Yeller. Now, before we started tonight, and I was doing this with the other drawer, Joe asked if I broke the edges before I glued it in, and I do not. And the reason why is that you actually only would want to break the edges that are in front of the drawer front. So if you try to do it before, then you run the risk of, like, you'll break the edges and then there won't be a nice crisp transition from pull to drawer front. So wait until it's glued in, and then also wait until, all right, so just leave it like that for 20, 30 minutes, and then you can come back to it. Ebony is so hard to read in terms of grain. So what I normally do is just hand plane it, and if it doesn't go well, I turn it around. This angle, this plane iron is bedded at 60 degrees, so it's really quite a bit like a scraper, which makes it good for woods like ebony and all those insane extraterrestrial woods they have down in Australia. That was a far less child-friendly sequel to E.T. the Extraterrestrial. I didn't just say that, did I? All right. I'll tell you one thing about ebony dust. It will make a mess. Like if you get it into Endgrain or into pores or something like that, and it is hard to get out. Almost there. One of the dangers of this is that if you start to hand plane the veneer itself, because that's going cross grain, and it could lead to some trouble. So really got to be careful when you're doing this. In fact, I'm going to go to my favorite flush trimming tool to finish this off. I get a little risky. What's that?
That's what I'll name the replay.
Getting a little risky. All right. Now, ebony takes a really nice, it burnishes really, really well. And the drawer fronts actually, you do not want to put any finish on them. I'm getting sandpaper right now, which is why you can't see me. You don't want to put any finish on the drawer fronts because it's just going to darken up, or it's going to even out the difference in the grain between the light and the late woods. So the drawer front and the pull do not get any shellac. They're just going to be waxed. But I'm going to just sand this ebony and just hope it doesn't make a huge mess. It just gets right down into the pores. It's such a... And then now you can come in and lightly break those corners. And I'm doing this with 400 grit paper. All right, that's done. That's really going to sound good on the audio, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get the ebony dust away. There we go. Maybe even. All right, so there's our drawer pull. I'll pull the tape off, sure. Oh, no. Nothing. I'm just kidding. Just joking. Although a little bit of tape is still stuck up there. So a little bit of the green tape is just kind of trapped up there. So I'm going to gently work it away. Here we go. All right, there you go. Very simple drawer pull, but big enough to get a hold of and pull out. Okay. All right. Any questions about the drawer pull?
Nope.
I will point out that I've made the bottoms for mine, and it's just 1/8 inch thick basswood. Just slides right in. You can glue it into the front. All right. There's really not anything back here that you can screw into. You can glue it in at the front, which is what I'll do. All right. No questions?
Chris wants to know, are there any other fun suggestions for materials for the pull?
You could use Coco Bolo would look nice. I like, this is the one place where I use exotic woods because most of them burnish really well, and you don't need to put a shellac finish on them. So in this use where I really would not want shellac on these veneers, these materials are ideal for the pulls because they don't need to have shellac on them. So ebony, cocobolo, anything that's in that sort of darker brown or black. Someone, did you just make that? Someone asked that, yeah. Things I would not use, pine, basswood, bloodwood, canary wood, zebra wood, yellow heart, purple heart, MDF. Cocobolo would look nice. Ebony would look nice. There are some other exotics that are similar in color to Cocobolo. No, there's really nothing else like ebony. And you want to get, if you're going to use ebony, I would get the, was it Gabon ebony that is all black as opposed to, is it Madagascar? Which is brown and black together. I mean, if you found a nice piece of Macassar, not Madagascar, Macassar ebony, it would also look nice. All right. Just plain old yellow glue. Don't need to worry about anything funky there. No, that's it.
That's all.
That's all righty then. Well, we will move on to the back and fit that. And I'll talk about also how I finished it up after it came out of the calls. So, and then we'll do the finish. And I'm not sure what I'll finish for you tonight, but we will actually do a complete finish on something. I don't know if it's going to be like the back or the whole cabinet or what, but we'll get it all done. It'd be fun to do the whole cabinet. Actually, I think that's what I'll do. All right. So I'm going to need to change out the blade, but before I do that, make sure all that ebony dust is off my hands. So here is my back. Both of the veneers are on it now. And what I did, so you glue the jointed face down to the plywood. And that means you have a rough bandsawn face facing out. And after it comes out of the clamps, when the first veneer is on, but not the second veneer, I take it out of the cawls. The first thing I did was went to the router table and used a flush trim bit to route the veneer flush to the plywood. And that works if there's not a boatload of squeeze out. And there's a clean, uninterrupted line of plywood for the bearing to run on. If you have a lot of squeeze out, you need to get rid of that first. Because when it comes time to fit the back, you want to have at least one clean, straight edge. All right. So anyways, I routed the veneer flush to the plywood, and then I ran it through the planer. And that got rid of the rough sawn surface. And I took it down to exactly 1/16 of an inch. The veneer, excuse me, is 1/16 of an inch. And see, you couldn't do that when it was just the veneer by itself. The planer would have eaten it alive. But once it's glued down, now it's like, you know, a 5/16 inch thick piece of wood, and you can easily run that through the planer. So I ran it through the planer and to give me a clean surface, and then I glued on the second veneer, routed it flush, and ran it through the planer until it was also a 1/16 of an inch thick. So both of my veneers now are 1/16 of an inch. And I then sanded it. I went 220, 320, 400. I might actually have started at 150. No, I used a random orbit sander. Joe asked if I did it by hand, and the 400 grit was by hand, but everything else was with a random orbit sander. I started with 150 because figured woods, it's really important that you want to start at a lower grit and to ensure that that entire surface is uniform in its scratch pattern before you begin to move up. And the higher you go up in grit, the more closed off the surface is, and the less splotchy and muddy the surface will appear once it has finish on it. All right. So that's how I got to this stage. This is the original piece of plywood that I cut. It hasn't been cut down at all yet. So we're going to do that now, but I do want to switch out blades to a 40-tooth crosscut blade. Right now I have that 24-tooth rip blade in there.
So width is already done. You're just cutting it to length.
No, it's over the. So Joe asked if the width was already done, and no, it's not. We have to cut it to length and rip it to width.
I ask all the dumb questions, so you guys don't have to.
That's something I'm totally used to by now, Joe. I'll never forget the time Joe asked me how to tie his Velcro shoes. Took like a half hour to get through that.
Jesus, thanks for the sacrifice.
The only dumb question is one you already know the answer to. I'm not even sure that's a dumb question. There are no dumb questions. Only dumb people. Smart people ask questions. That doesn't mean if you don't ask questions, you're not smart, but questions, I've always thought, are a sign of intelligence. Other signs of intelligence are male pattern baldness, charming Floridian accents.
Beards.
Yeah, salt and pepper beards. Spectacles. A taste for fried chicken. Okay. I once again made the mistake of having fried chicken in Connecticut last Friday night. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good.
They're opening a hot fried chicken place near my house.
Oh, yeah. Someone told, I think I heard about that. I'm actually not a fan of hot fried chicken.
Never had it.
Fried chicken needs to have a little bit of spice, but it doesn't need to make you sweat. You know, it doesn't need to burn your mouth. Yes, I am, but I'm not grew up eating fried chicken. All right. We're going to go for the length first and then the width. And that's because you always cut across the grain and then with the grain. Let me pull that drawer out. And we are fitting this directly to the cabinet. I want to put this down on something. I know they can't see that, can they? You're gonna have to move. You have to move the camera when it's time for this. All right. So I'm gonna square up one end. Then I'm gonna come over and mark the length directly from the cabinet, and then come back and cut it to length. I'll most likely set the stop to do that, because if it's a little bit too long, I can use the micro adjust feature and trim it down. Okay. I'll turn on the dust collector. So I have marked it. Maybe I should turn off the dust collector. No, the dust collector might kill out the sound because it's so high. Actually, Zoom will do it automatically. All right, so I'm gonna bring this line up, and then just a little smidge of it, a little bit of it on the top here, or on this surface, so I can see it. I want to make sure that this is, yeah, this is not zero clearance right now. I want to make sure. I wonder why it's not. No, because this is coming from, no, this side of the blade never changes its location. The width of it would be affecting that side. Getting awfully close to the aluminum fence on the back side, yeah. All right. Oh, man, this is going to be a tough one.
Couple questions if you got it.
Yeah, I got time for questions.
All right. First question from Michael. Can you joint an edge to clean up the side for Final Cut?
Yeah, you could do that. A couple of things to consider, though. If you have big globs of dried glue, I personally would not run that over a joiner blade. But if it's clean, you're not, I mean, blades get dull. That's what they do. Well, because everyone always says, well, plywood will dull your blades. Well, everything dulls your blades. So it's okay to run plywood over a jointer, especially if you have a segmented cutter head. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. So you could do that, sure, but I would not do it if there's a bunch of glue on it, because that will, especially if you have just straight knives, it'll most likely, it could cause your blades to chip.
Got another one from Jeannie.
All right.
Are you paying any attention to the grain of the veneer being parallel to the case sides?
Well, ideally, excuse me. I mean, I don't know how easy it is to see the grain here. It's not perfectly straight up and down, but it's pretty darn close. All right. So I try to get it as straight up and down as I can, because that then does reinforce the rectilinear shape and lines of the cabinet. Whereas if it were diagonal, it would really struggle against it. You could maybe run the grain this way, and that might look interesting. It could look cool. But I think if it were angled, it would not. It would look not cool. All right. I'm going to turn the dust collector back on and make this cut, and then work it until it fits. Yep. I mean, I don't want to brag or anything. I'm pretty good. Uh, last week I was teaching a class in my shop for 3 days with a student, one student, and we made a wall cabinet, which is over on my desk. Yeah, show it. Why don't you show it? Yes, we made this wall cabinet in the class, and it has this little drawer, right? So when I was setting my marking gauge, I set it for 1/4 inch, which is what I wanted the sides to be, not realizing that I'd left the sides about close to 5/16. So we cut all the cut all the dovetails and everything, glue it in, and then I realized my mistake. So we glue it up, and there's quite a bit of material there left that needs to be removed. And we were short on time, so I was like, we're not going to hand plane this because it would just take too long. So what I did was at the table saw, I cut all the extra material away. And I did it on my drawer first in case it got messed up. It would be my drawer, not his. So I did that, and I basically cut it perfectly flush with the end grain of the front. And then I just went like this, and it just slid right in. And then I turned to the guy and I said, listen, I don't mean to brag, but I'm pretty fucking good. I couldn't believe it actually worked, that I got it to fit off the drawer, off the table saw. That was crazy. All right. And we're back. All right, I just cut it to length. So now I'm going to rip it down to width.
Triple F has a question. What if your case was not absolutely square? Could you fit the back for that with, say, a block plane? Triple F is actually Frank. Thanks, Frank.
Yes. In fact, do you remember how we fit the drawer front? We took a bevel gauge, and I showed you how to set it to the angle, and then you were to transfer that angle onto the end of the drawer front. You would do the exact same thing here. Take a bevel gauge, get that angle for at a square, and put that on your case, and then you could take a block plane and just work it down to that line. I was going to say this when I was done, but it is important that this back fit in there nice and snug, because we're going to glue it in, and it gives the cabinet a lot more strength. But that only works if the back fits in there tightly. Yeah, we'll get there. Don't worry. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet, son. All right. I'm just moving the fence over. All right. What I'm going to do is create a nice clean edge and then rip it to width. So I'm going to rip it, clean up the edge, mark it, rip it to width, and then we'll turn the dust collector off. You want to? I got it. I think so. Let's move this all over here. I really hope it's close because I just moved the rip fence. All right. I hope I got it, in other words. What is it getting caught on? From when I was squaring up, there is a little bump out in here. All right, how's it going to go in there? How's it going to fit in there, fellers? It's going to fit in like this. I was looking at my grain and everything to see where what I wanted to be visible in the cabinet. Ooh. Yeah. What was that, Joseph?
Just asking.
Joseph asked if I had gotten too cocky. Not in ages. Okay, so that fits really nice and tight. And there's only one thing left to do with the back. And I don't know if we're going to do it on camera or not. Somehow you have to hang this cabinet, right? It's a small cabinet and it's very light and you're not putting anything heavy in it. Normally, a cabinet is hung from the top. And when this was the first cabinet I ever did what I'm about to tell you about on. Because it's not very deep and you can't, if you could do a French cleat, but you would be taking up so much space to get a back in there and then the French cleat that the drawer in particular, the drawers would be unusable. And so in order to get as much space as I could in the side of the cabinet, one, I made the back stick out proud, which is what you see here. So that means even less. So that saves me like 1/8 of an inch inside the cabinet, which is not negligible on something this small. I made it from plywood and glued the plywood back in. And then to hang it, I drilled two holes in the back, and they are hidden behind the top drawer. And so they would come out the back here. And so then I find, hopefully there's a stud in the wall, not in the shop, because there's not one. And you can put one screw into the stud, and the other screw you can go into the wall and use some type of drywall anchor to hold it. Personally, I prefer to use toggle bolts. So especially if I don't have a stud, then I'm absolutely using toggle bolts because those are never coming out. And because this cabinet is so light, it'll hang forever like that. The original, which is now like 10 years old, has been hanging that way all along. And I've hung many cabinets that way. As long as it's a small, delicate cabinet, it's not an issue. A bigger, heavier cabinet, you need to change the way you hang it. All right. And so, like the cabinet I just showed you, the one I made last week with my student, is being hung on a French cleat. All right. Okay. So, I would now drill these holes in there. And I guess I could do that, right? It won't take us that long to do that. And then I don't have to worry about it. What I'm going to do is kind of mark on the back so I know roughly where this drawer pocket is. All right, here we go. And I'm going to come in about a 1/2 inch inside the drawer pocket. And then, you know, about a 1/2 inch down from the top of the drawer pocket. And that's where I'm going to drill my holes. A 1/4 inch hole is more than big enough. You want it to have a little bit of adjustment so that when you get it on the wall, you can make sure that it's level and plumb. One of the things I will often do is, you know, you want to have your screws first. All right. So if you're using like a number 8, what I'll do is one of those is going to be pretty much dead on the correct diameter for that size screw. And then the other one's a little bit oversized. So you can put that first one in and it's nice and tight. And then the other one, you have some room for adjustment. Okay. So I'm going to do that now. I have a 1/2 inch bit in there, a 1/4 inch bit, which is really way too big for a number, say, number 8 screw. Yeah. No, those are way too big. You see that? Yeah, give me that. The smallest one there's a 1/4 inch. You see the little orange bags? There's an 1/8 and a 3/16. Oh, 3/16 is probably, yeah, a 3/16 is good. Yeah. So I'm going to do 2 3/16 inch holes through here. I've gotten pretty good at hanging stuff. So, but a little, but on the other one, you could switch to like a 1/4 inch. All right. So let me change this out.
Any questions?
I'm going to take this opportunity to change battery.
Okay. Does that mean that the
Yeah, picture will go out.
So we're going to change the battery on the camera, which means the image will go out for a second. But when you come back, we'll be ready to drill holes. I can keep talking if I want. I forgot that I need to talk to entertain. All right. Well, we're ready. I'm ready when you're ready. You ready? All right. So I have the fence set up this way, and what I'm going to do is drill this hole and then turn it around, and I will actually switch out the bit to a 1/4 inch bit. And that way, see, if they're not perfectly aligned vertically up, then that 1/4 inch, that a little bit bigger hole allows you to compensate for that. All right. Also, I'm fully aware of how unusual this method for hanging a cabinet is. And I'm fully aware that someone might question doing this, but it works. So there you have it. All right, one hole. One hole.
Michael wants to know why put the holes up in the corners. It seems like it would be hard to get the screwdriver in the small drawer to work well.
Well, what I do is, yeah, you can either use a long screwdriver, which yeah, sorry, I have to text my daughter. Right, it's not. You want them in the corner because the further apart they are, and the higher up in that drawer, the more holding strength you have from them. Right. If they were both really close to the center, that wouldn't stabilize the cabinet very well. So the further apart they are, the better. And then the higher up they are in the hole in the drawer pocket is better too. So that's why. Okay. Let's draw this other hole, fellas. I didn't think that got all the way through. Oh, I can't believe I just did that on video. Don't ever do that. Of course, if you don't have a drill press, you can still do this with a handheld drill. There we go. Okay. One thing I will say, I also, when I hang the cabinet, you're going to use a pan head screw and a washer. And that washer will help, it will keep the pan head from, like indenting into the back. Well, I think that brings us to applying the finish. We all ready to do that? Okay. So when it comes to the back, you can apply finish to both faces, but do not apply finish to the edges because that's where the glue is going to go. All right. So let's do some finishing, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, extraterrestrials, raccoons and armadillos. All right. I guess I'll just do it right on top of here. Let me get out some of my little benchy guys. Well, I will say I did not. I know there's one spot here that I kind of need to hit with. I need to hit these front edges really quickly with sandpaper. So before we do finish, we are going to do that. What happened to that 220? I just do this with my thumb. And you start on the inside and work your way out.
David wants to know, he says, I don't remember Matt covering cleanup of the front edges if they're nicked, etc.
All right, so yeah, before you do any surface prep, and I will say I did all my surface prep on the cabinet already because I want to show finishing, and to go through the entire surface prep for the cabinet that's about an hour for me. So if you have any dents and dings, you look for those, and you can try just plain water and see if that normally will get them out. And then you're good to go with your regular surface prep. If they don't come out, you can steam them out. If they still don't come out, well, then your cabinet has a dent in it. I remember right after I got my truck, I was at my son's Cub Scout meeting, and I'm telling you, my truck was maybe a couple of months old. And I come out into the parking lot, which the Cub Scout meetings took place at an American Legion, I think, with a bar, and there was always people in the bar on Tuesday night at the American Legion. Not a depressing place to be at all. And there's a dent in my truck. And I was kind of upset until my buddy John said, well, now you're not going to be too precious about your truck. So if your cabinet already has a dent in it, it won't bother you if it gets another one, which was John's point. And so he was right. I really didn't care anymore. I just started driving into telephone poles and all kinds of crazy stuff. Now I'll come back and get these. Ooh.
Jeannie says, please, Matt, talk more about surface prep for the outside of the cabinet.
Okay, yeah, don't worry, I would definitely do that. Normally what I do is hand plane it down, everything flush, and then go from 220 up to 400. If there are sizable tracks from the plane, then you might have to start lower than 220. If your plane is genuinely, truly sharp and you cambered it well, you may not have to do anything. You can just leave it as is and no sanding. But I normally sand everything. So after I hand planed it, I actually this time used, because it was big enough and there was enough sort of square footage, I used my random orbit sander and went and did 220 and 320 and then hand sanded at 400. Okay. Now, holding something like this, the hand plane, can be tricky. You can hold it. There's a lot of good strategies for holding stuff like this in drawers. And one of the things you can do is make a piece of plywood. I talked about this with the drawers. Make a piece of plywood that comes across your bench top, and it's notched to get the cabinet onto it. And then you can hand plane that. You can hand plane this if it doesn't fit in your vise. And unless you have a fairly sizable twin screw vise, it's not going to fit in between the screws. And I'll tell you this, professional finishers will tell you all day long that it does not matter what grit you go to. What matters is a consistent scratch pattern. I have a friend that works in a he works in a custom furniture place that, you know, has like 3 or 4 guys in the shop, and they do a lot of work for designers down in the city. I don't think they do anything past 220, and their finishers are fine with that, and everything looks great afterwards. Okay. I already did all that stuff. So I'm going up to 400 here. A good finish is absolutely the product of good surface prep. So it definitely pays to take your time at this stage, get rid of tear out, make sure that, you know, things are level, and then go through your your sanding grits carefully. All right. I also have seen true physical evidence of this. This took place at a school in Maine, and I know I'm friends with the person that runs the program there now. And a couple, you know, when I was still at the magazine, I was up at his place doing photography, and he said, you know, listen, we have this debate about hand planed surfaces versus sanded surfaces and whether there's a difference and da 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 da. So they did a test. They took 2 pieces of cherry from the same board. One of them was prepared up to 400 grit sandpaper. The other one was hand planed by a person whose name I won't mention, but is someone who really knows how to hand plane and knows how to uses Japanese tools and knows how to sharpen, you know, so it's an extremely well planed surface. They did the exact same finish on both of them. A year later, you couldn't tell the difference between the 2 of them. So it probably doesn't really matter if you hand plane or sand. All right.
Jeannie wants to know real quick, did you ever raise the grain and then resand?
No, I don't do that. Although shellac will raise the grain a little bit, and I am going to sand after the first coat. All right, children. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a finish on the inside right now. I might just do the outside surfaces and skip the front edge and the inside and save that till later. So I typically mix my own shellac. I buy super blonde flakes, de-wax shellac, and make it with, you know, you melt it with denatured alcohol. But you can also go to Menards or Maynard's or Home Depot or Lowe's and get a can of Zinsser. I like the clear shellac personally. Amber will give a little bit of color to the cherry. That's fine. These are waxed shellacs, which really only matter, I guess, if you're going to put something over it. But I do think the wax in the shellac makes it shinier in the end. And sometimes I've had trouble knocking the shine down, which I'm going to do. And But so I prefer de-wax shellac. So if you're going to use this stuff, what I do is I cut it, mix it 50-50 with denatured alcohol, and that creates a really thin cut of shellac, which I'm going to carefully open up this jar. It creates a really thin cut of shellac that dries super fast, which is nice because it means that you're not getting a bunch of junk in the finish as it dries. And also, you get done really fast, which is nice.
What are you using?
I'm using a little bit of t-shirt to apply it, and all I've done is fold it up. All right, that's one side down. And we'll get this. Isn't that pretty? It also means you got to move pretty quick because you get lines in your shellac if it dries as you're going, and if it's still a little damp, the denatured alcohol from the new stuff will sort of melt the stuff that's already there. Okay. Now let's do this last.
Rob wants to know, what ratio did you use for the shellac flakes and denatured alcohol?
Well, I go for about a 1 to 1.5 pound cut, and I do not remember what the exact ratio for that is, but so I buy my shellac from shellacnet.com or shellac.net or something, and they have a recipe chart on the website. All right, now the first side that I did is already dry. It dries really, really fast. But I do want to show you what you can do if you have little gaps in your joinery. You can get some shellac on some 400 grit paper and sand, and you should be able to fill those gaps. If it doesn't quite work, what you can do is get a piece of cherry, say maybe 200 grit. Make some dust, get that dust, work it into the crack, and then shellac over it. That will darken the dust, and you will not be able to tell that it's there. All right, I'm going to do a second coat of the shellac now. Take long strokes over the whole length of the piece. That first coat will absolutely raise the grain a little bit. Now, I know a lot of people want to know about, well, I don't know if it's still the case. I think I'm kind of glad that I don't see this as much anymore. But when I started woodworking, there was always discussion and articles about how to darken cherry. And the best way to darken cherry is to finish it with shellac and then let it live. And it'll just darken on its own, like within a year. It'll have a really nice, that nice dark cherry that everyone likes.
Got a question from Sue. It says, can you talk a little more about why you use shellac versus maybe some oil products? I've only used oils, not very familiar with shellacs.
I like shellac because shellac is very clear. I have found, like, boiled linseed oil, you could not pay me to use. It looks great, maybe looks great when you first apply it. A couple of years down the road, it all just looks kind of muddy and kind of ugh. So I would not use anything that is like a wiping oil. I don't like them. I think that after a few years, they don't really look nice. I do on occasion use, when I need more protection than the shellac can afford me or gives me, I use not a Danish oil is more oil than varnish. It's an oil varnish mix, but there's more oil than varnish in it. A wiping varnish is more varnish than oil, and that's what I would use. Something like Water Locks, not Watco, but Water Locks. And Water Locks develops a nice film finish. So when I want something for like a tabletop or a piece that's going to be handled a lot, I would use Water Locks. But I like shellac because it's easy to apply. It dries very quickly. It has a nice clarity to it. And you can repair it if you need to. It's really not a hard finish to apply. So I like the way it looks. I like the luster that you end up with. I like that you're not a thick film finish. I don't like that because it kind of feels like you're hiding the wood. I want the wood to still feel and look like wood.
Jake wants to know, will cherry darken in a room without direct light or UV light?
Yes. I mean, like, are you going to put it in a safe? Are you going to put it in your lockdown room, vault, in the basement? I honestly don't know what would happen if you put it in a room that it never got direct light, but I believe it darkens because of oxidation. Is that right? Or is it UV darkening?
Man cave,
In your man cave. I don't have a man cave. I have a man cavern. I don't know what that means. All right. It's now good and dry. And I'm going to wet sand it. I have some 800 grit sandpaper here. It's wet dry sandpaper. And this is just hand sanding. Actually, just get a quarter sheet of it, a little tiny bit of it. And I'm going to use mineral spirits. You could also use water, but I'm using mineral spirits because it sort of flashes off a little more quickly. And it's just a gentle sanding. You're knocking down the grain that was raised because it will get raised a little bit. And you're also smoothing, creating a really smooth surface.
Why no lacquer? Michael wants to know.
I mean, lacquer is just a more difficult finish to work with. I imagine it can be thinned, with lacquer thinner, but I mean, I don't know. Lacquer is just I don't know. Shellac is. I just find it really easy. I don't find it noxious. You know, some heavily manufactured film finishes. You know, like that. Even if they're water based, I find to be very unpleasant to use in terms of fumes and so forth. And lacquer is one of those. It's just lacquer bothers me. Yeah. Yeah, and shellac is really easy. Like, you know, I'm applying it with an old bit of t-shirt, just let it dry out and toss it. It's easy. And if you use a brush, and sometimes I use a brush, you just let the shellac harden the bristles, and then before you use it the next time, you soak it in denatured alcohol for 10 minutes, and it's good to go. It's such a user-friendly finish. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe this down, because sometimes the denatured alcohol can take a while to dry. I'm not wiping it down to get rid of any sanding dust, because the truth is when I apply the next coat of shellac, that would melt that dust down and it would become part of the finish again. All right. I think that's good enough. All right, so now I'm going to do another coat of shellac. And this time you really want to make sure that you're taking full overlapping strokes. How terrible it would be if I dropped this thing right now.
I'd lie. Just pack my stuff up and
Now the reason I can use just a bit of folded up cloth is because these are not big surfaces. If it were a bigger surface, you'd want to make a more traditional applicator, which is a bunch of material balled up, and then there's cloth wrapped around it, and the balled up material becomes like a reservoir and allows you to apply more shellac over a larger area without having to recharge it, as they say. There are names for those applicators, but I'm not going to say either one of them because neither one of them is a word I want to say right now. So that's the 3 coats that I do. And I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes, and I can answer questions before we move on to the next stage of finishing.
no question.
Yeah. In normal conditions, I would have done everything at once. You know, I would have done the interior, I would have done the front edges, but that would have taken longer, and I want to make sure that we get through all of this. And so tomorrow I'll go back and do the inside and the front edges, and I'll do the back. The back I'm probably going to do a little video of and put it on Instagram because it's going to be awesome because it's so nicely figured. Nicely figured.
Rob has a question. He says, any tips for finishing the inside corners?
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about a little bit of t-shirt material is that you can unfold it and then just use your fingers to get it up into that corner. So wipe it through the corner first and then come down. All right. Away from the corner. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like a little box, I can finish the entire box in about 10 minutes.
Jake asked thoughts on avoiding lines. He said he's reduced lines by going to a lighter cut and working quickly, but still have some issues.
One, you want to make sure that you're overlapping as you apply it, and work faster. See, the lighter the cut, the faster it dries. So that means the faster you need to work, because when it dries and creates that hard line, that's when you get the lines. So the other thing that also helps with that is sanding, doing that wet, dry sanding. And then what we're going to do next.
Another one, nothing inside the drawer cavities, says Michael.
No, nothing inside the drawer cavities.
Why?
Because it'll affect the fit of the drawer first. I mean, in theory, you could shellac in there and it's fine. But the traditional thing is not to do any finish in there. Especially don't do something like boiled linseed oil, because it'll never dry and it'll be gummy. Yeah. So you don't do a finish. You could wax it. That's fine. You could wax the drawer. All right. So now we're going to steel wool this thing. And you want to get good steel wool, not the stuff from Menards. So this is an extra fine steel wool made by Brewax, and you can get it at somewhere like Woodcraft or Rockler. You can probably find it on Amazon too. I heard Jeff Bezos is hurting for money, so hurry up and buy some. I'm going to cut a little bit off. By the way, this really does a number on your scissors. All right, so now I'm gonna just hit it with the steel wool. And what I'm really doing here is I'm giving you can probably see now that there is like a sheen to it. And I want that sheen to be uniform. So what I'm gonna do is knock it down. I'm gonna dull the shellac with the steel wool. And hopefully you'll be able to see this difference. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. But like I said, sometimes with wax shellac, I really have trouble buffing that sheen out. But I think it's here. All right, so I don't know how well this is going to. All right, so this has not been no steel wool, and then steel wool. Is there a difference?
Kind of back and forth, if you will.
Like this?
Yeah,
Like this.
no, like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it should make a little bit of a difference. It'll take away the luster of the shellac. And you're like, well, yeah, it makes it flatter. And you're like, well, don't you want luster? Yes. But I want a nice even luster. So I'm going to hit that. I'm going to hit this. This is also kind of like sanding it. It creates a smoother surface than even the 800 grit sandpaper does. And you could do something like a 1,000 or 2,000 grit wet dry sandpaper now. You can buy that stuff at an automotive place like AutoZone or Pep Boys. Or in my town, I live in a small town in New England, in Connecticut. For the longest time, there was an old Napa that's in an old house, and then there was an AutoZone. And then what's the other one, like Western Auto or something? What's the other one beside AutoZone? Advanced Auto. Advanced Auto. Well, it was one or the other was already here for like 10 years. And then the other one came along and bought the piece of property right next door to it and built one. So now there's two auto supply stores literally next to each other. Yeah.
Michael follows up his last one saying, "What changes if you use an open grain wood when you're finishing? The steel wool can get into the pores. Any other thoughts?"
Yeah, steel wool, if you do something with a really big open pore, definitely the steel wool can get into it. Which is why people do grain fillers. And it's also why I don't use open pored woods. But if the pores are not too big, then you can just do exactly what I'm doing here. I've done white oak this way with no trouble. Walnut, I've done with no trouble. All right, let's see.
Graham, we're not going to finish the Endgrain veneers.
Correct. You're just going to put wax on them.
And then Jay Leslie wants to know, will a Scotch pad work on the shellac?
Most likely, yeah. I don't see why not. I don't know if I would use a green Scotch pad. I would probably use one of the blue ones, which those are the ones you use on non-stick pots and pans because it doesn't mess up that finish. So it must be even finer than the green ones. So I would probably use that. So why don't you give that a feel and tell the folks how smooth that is?
Yeah, it's really cute.
And then the last thing is a bit of wax. You can use whatever wax you like. I like Renaissance wax. It is a bit pricey. This can is usually $29, but also I have been in Connecticut for 12 years. I bought this can 12 years ago, and it's still not empty. What I like about it, a couple of things. One, I like the luster that it has.
Is that a t-shirt?
Yeah, this is just old t-shirt.
You leave it in there?
Yep, I just leave it in the can. Joe asked me what I was using to apply it and whether or not I leave it in the can in between uses, and I do. I like the luster of Renaissance wax. I also like that you don't buff it. You apply it, and then when you dry, it's done.
Graham wants to know, what's your opinion on pre-finishing? He says, I wiped on some shellac inside the case prior to gluing it up.
Yeah, I often do that myself. But to have done it in this forum would have complicated things, right? It would have been like, okay, well now let's stop and do a finishing lesson when we're still making the case. So I didn't do that. Usually at this stage, I'm working at my bench and I have a clean towel on my bench, and I can put the cabinet or the box or whatever down on the towel. I don't really want to put it down on any of the finished surfaces down on these little bench horses.
Why don't you buff the wax?
That's just the way it's made. You don't have to do it. It's just the nature of the wax. And I can't explain it to you. It's a microcrystalline wax, which is somehow different than like a Johnson's paste wax or Bowl & Alley wax or Boudreaux's butt paste or whatever. If you have kids, you know Boudreaux's butt paste. It's not a wax either.
It's a miracle worker.
It is. Is that what it's called? Boudreaux's butt paste, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So now, see, I don't know. I like that luster. It's a nicer, more even sheen and luster than the shellac by itself, because the shellac was definitely applied in uneven thickness, right? Even though it's unbelievably thin, it's still sort of uneven. So by knocking it down with the wax to an even luster, and then I'm with this wool to an even luster, and then applying the shellac, you now have a nice uniform surface, which is going to look a lot nicer than if you just leave the shellac by itself. Now, if you can spray shellac, you may not have that problem, but there we go. There's our cabinet.
Graham wants to know when do you use non-clear shellac? Any woods you prefer it on?
The only time I've used non-clear shellac, I made a little pine cupboard based on a shaker cabinet. And actually, the shaker cabinet was made at the Shaker Village in Enfield, Connecticut. And it's normally called the Enfield cupboard. I made that out of white pine, and I mixed amber and clear shellac together, and I tested it until I had the right sort of honey color look to it, and then I applied it to the white pine. Otherwise, I always use clear shellac. I think wood is beautiful, and I want the natural beauty of the wood to be there, so I don't stain anything, and I don't use toned shellacs or lacquers or anything. Now, obviously, I do use milk paint a lot, but that's different because it's opaque, and the whole point of a painted box lid like this one is that it is yellow and not that it's wood that has been, has a colored finish on it. So the paint works really well there.
David says carpet tile samples are great for your bench when you're finishing. And then Michael says, are we putting stops inside the drawer cabinet?
Oh, yeah, stops. I was thinking about that earlier when I was doing the pull. Yeah, so you do put stops in there. There's two ways to do stops. One way, and now this is, before you put the back on, you put the drawer in, and you get it aligned with where you want it in the front. Me, I'm probably going to inset these drawers a tiny little amount, like a 1/16 of an inch or something. Inset them in from the front of the cabinet, because that will help protect the Endgrain a little bit more, the veneers a little bit more. And also, if your drawer front is not perfectly flat and straight up and down, if you inset it, it hides that. So once you get it in the right, then you come in and you glue a stop in at the back. And you would just glue it to the bottom of the divider, or you would glue it to the divider. The other way to do one, see, when you glue it in at the back, it's going to hit the drawer bottom. So if the drawer bottom expands, it's going to possibly push the drawer front out past the front of the cabinet. When you do it at the back, you're sort of not gambling is not the right word, but you're sort of betting that as the drawer bottom expands and contracts, it expands and contracts at the same rate as the cabinet. And so the front never sticks out past, the drawer front never sticks out past the front of the cabinet, because they're expanding and contracting at the same rate. The other way to do it is to locate it in the front at the front, so that when you close the drawer, it touches the back of the drawer front. Now, the thickness of the drawer front does not change. All right. And that stop is always going to be in the same location relative to the front of the cabinet, regardless of wood movement. And so the location of the front the drawer front in relation to the front edge of the cabinet will not change. So I normally put my stop in at the front. under, right. But and the way to locate that is to take an adjustable square like this one or your combo square and just set it so that it's right there in line with the back edge of the drawer front, the back face of it, and then you would use that to locate your stop and glue it in. It's a little trickier to do that because you have to reach in through the cabinet, and it's a little bit easier to do it at the back, but this is what I prefer. And I normally use CA glue to locate the stops on small stuff like this because it's kind of hard to clamp in there. But if you use a good, I like DAP Rapid Fuse. It's a really good, strong setting, quick setting CA glue. It's a sort of a medium viscosity. It's not really thin, but it's also not too thick. So a little bit of that, clamp it with your fingers for 20 seconds, and it's done. So that's normally how I do it. Any other questions?
Will you finish the front exposed edges of the drawer divider?
Yeah. I didn't do what I normally do. I would normally have done the interior and the front edges, but for the sake of time, I only did the outside so that we could get through the entire process. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. Chris wants to know if you're using milk paint as an accent, what sort of finish do you put a top on top of the? Do you put a finish on top of the milk paint?
That depends. If it is somewhere, well, so let's say I paint the edge around the edges of a box lid, but not the top and bottom surface, which is something I do, often. Well, then I'm going to want to shellac, say, the top and bottom surface. It's kind of hard to shellac that top and bottom surface without getting it on the edges. So in that case, I would shellac the milk paint. However, on this box, where the entire lid is painted, I would not shellac this. I would wax it, and that's it. So if it's unavoidable, I will apply a finish to it. If it's avoidable, I do not. I wax it. Because it is a finish, It's like it's kind of like asking me, oh, would you put shellac over latex paint? Well, no. The latex paint is the finish. The milk paint is the finish. It's just sometimes you can't avoid. It's just too hard to keep the shellac off there. So just go ahead and do it. And it looks nice. It looks fine. I just don't do it unless I have to.
Jake wants to know, do you do anything to prevent the drawer from being pulled out, or is it too small to worry about?
Well,
Stop.
Oh, no. There's not a stop to prevent it from coming out. It's too small. Because if you were to put one in there, it would have to be something, I don't know, I guess you could make some kind of contraption that allowed you to take the drawer in and out. But no, there's no stop to keep it from coming out. At first I was like, to keep it from coming open. And I was like, but the whole point of a drawer is to open it. Why would you not want to be able to open it?
Graham wants to know, what's your next online class going to be? And then I asked if he had any suggestions. He said, how about something with a door and hinges?
Yeah, we could. I could do that. That would be a nice thing to do next. Probably not a wall cabinet again. Maybe something like a tea cabinet with a door, or maybe a little jewelry cabinet that has doors on it. Something like that.
We've got a quarter sano cabinet with hinge door. which you just said you won't do any hanging cabinets. And then Michael says box classes.
Yeah, there is that really nice quarter sawn red oak wall cabinet that I made and that I have plans for sale now, which is a beautiful cabinet. It has butt hinges, which I'd rather do butt hinges than knife hinges just because knife hinges are so hard. But I'll think about it. And most likely what I'll end up doing is designing something newish. Although there is one of the boxes in my next book has a little hinge door in it. And that's a really cool little jewelry cabinet. So, but some of the problems is that like with that cabinet, that particular little jewelry cabinet box, it's more than 6 lessons. And I'm not sure how long I could do one of these, like how many weeks in a row I could do this without killing myself, but we'll think about it. A box making class is certainly possible. I would probably want to, I'm not sure what we would do, maybe make a couple of different boxes. But yeah, we could certainly a box making class could be next. That's it for now. All right. Well, I want to say first that I greatly appreciate everyone who signed up for the class. One, I am passionate about furniture making, and I love to share my experience and my knowledge and to possibly inspire other people, which helps the craft survive. And that's something that I care about. So one, I thank you for that reason. But also I want to thank you because, in the time of COVID, I wasn't able to travel and teach like I normally do. And I needed income. And this turned out to be a nice way to make some money. And I greatly appreciate that, as does Joseph. But also I want to thank you because it's nice to know that the work that I do and the contributions I try to make to the community are appreciated, and that it inspires other people. And that is, really the most rewarding part of what I do, is knowing that it's appreciated by all of you and that it inspires all of you to get out into the shop. So really, genuinely, thank you for taking the class. And thank you for all your support in other venues like Instagram and whatever, reading my books, buying my books, all of that stuff. I really appreciate it. I can't express how happy I am every day when I wake up and work, because I don't really think it's work. It's more like I have fun and somehow I make enough money to survive. So it's awesome. And y'all are a big part of that. Joe says thank you too, right, Joe?
Thanks, everybody. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well, if there aren't any other questions.
There's let's see, there's a couple of last things. A lot of people saying thanks. Frank says maybe a one-day class on making Kumiko sleds or other sleds and jigs. Brian says, thank you, Matt. So grateful for you to share all of this with us. Love your Kumiko book. Frank says, thanks, Matt. Thanks so much. Death to Instagram trolls. Thanks for the great class. See you next time you come out here, says Jeannie.
Yes, Jeannie, the next time I'm out there, I imagine we will probably see each other. Unless it's still COVID.
She gave a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, happy Thanksgiving, all the
everyone enjoy the holiday.
People from US.
Don't forget, you can still ask questions and I'll answer them. Goodbye. So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. I don't know the rest of the song.